Have you ever found a quote-unquote mistake in whatever you've made, whether you're knitting, sewing, crocheting, way too far after the fact, and you couldn't go back and you couldn't fix it, and it just feels like it completely ruined your entire piece? Well, today I want to go a little bit into making our own things and making a few little hiccups along the way, and that being, in my opinion, quite beautiful. In case you're new here at Engineering Knits, I like to do a lot of different fiber crafts. Knitting is my main one, but I also crochet, sew, tat, weave, and more. I really like focusing on the historical aspects of all those fiber crafts, whether it be from vintage all the way back to I have plans for prehistoric. Speaking of this historical crafting, I'm going to focus specifically on historical knitting. And something that I've thought about in the past is that people before my time were much more fastidious and much more intricate with their work and paid so much more attention to detail and were just more skilled at that than we are today. And so their work is mistake-free. Over time, I've learned, that's not necessarily true. You might not know this, but I own quite an extensive collection of antique and vintage knits. And one of my favorite things to do is to take a look at those pieces and look for those signature marks that I know makes it handmade. And I actually look for those little mistakes, or hiccups as I prefer to call them. So why don't we go ahead and go look at some of my antique and vintage garments, not to point out like, oh look, they made mistakes too, but to appreciate the object and the piece itself and to see how beautiful the whole is despite or even because of the little hiccups that were made along the way. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll probably recognize this vintage knit sweater. I wear it quite often. It's super comfortable, super warm, and in my opinion, really, really cute. I love the design, I love the colors, I love everything about this, but it is also not without its own hiccups. We are currently looking at the inside of this cardigan, or in knitting we say the wrong side of the work, and as you can see on the rows above and below where the marker is, that little tuck stitch happens exactly in the middle of the three, but on this particular lighter white row, it's happening a little further to the left. And again, I really don't think that this ruins the cardigan at all. Quite the opposite for me personally. I absolutely love this little quirk of this sweater. It makes me smile every time I see it. This next cheerful sweater is another one of my favorites. It is a vintage piece that I acquired. I didn't knit it myself, but I absolutely love it. It's another one that just makes me feel so cheerful when I wear it, but it does also have its own few little hiccups, and if you're eagle-eyed enough, you can even spot it in this footage. But if not, that's okay. Let's take a closer look. This is a sweater that I would love to deconstruct and figure out the pattern of because of these little ridges that run vertically down the whole sweater. I don't exactly know how that stitch is made, and if you know, please let me know, but you can see that the original maker or knitter of this sweater had a few moments where her lines got a little off track. And this is another one where I can see it when I'm wearing it, and it makes me so happy to know that this person who created it probably noticed at the time that they were making it or some rows later and just decided to say, you know what, it's okay. I'll leave it in there. It's fine. This beautiful vest is not one that you'll have seen before because I will never wear it as it is in far too delicate condition. There are a few stitches that are just in danger of unraveling the piece completely, so I handle it very, very carefully. And this vest, as stunning as it is, also has its own little quirks and hiccups along the way. And this is another one where I feel like looking at those little stitches that are maybe not exactly in the right place is almost like the signature of the maker. So you'll see here a few times in the zigzags there are some missed stitches or misplaced stitches. And again, I really think that it just adds to the beauty of this piece because it is just so stunning, and to think that someone sat there and hand knit this entire vest is absolutely amazing. You probably won't believe me for how inexpensive I got this piece actually. I've been wanting one for so long, but it is in incredibly delicate condition. My antique knits tend to all be in very fine gauge, and that includes this
original Victorian miser's purse that I have, which is beautifully beaded from end to end, and it was knit up in this lovely scarlet red color. I've knit my own miser's purse before, but I've never made a beaded one, and I think this one is a beautiful example of a beaded one, even if there are a few beads that are out of place. I doubt they fell off because the knit stitches are still intact, so I just think that it was a little bit of a hiccup made when it was knit in the first place. The hand knit lace trim on this petticoat makes my eyes water with how incredibly fine this work is. It's basically sewing thread that was knit up into this trim. It's absolutely gorgeous, despite, or even more so, because you can see the little human hiccups in this, like missing a yarn over or slightly misplacing some of the yarn overs in other areas. We have another example of hand knit lace at the bottom of these bloomers. I've actually recreated this pattern myself for my own bloomers, and oh my goodness, did it take me forever to knit this lace, and it wasn't even close to being as finely knit. And I love looking at this example of this slightly misplaced yarn over, because you can see that the creator probably saw what happened and just went along with it. All of the subsequent ones are also slightly misplaced, but the trim is still beautiful, and the knitter of this particular lace trim just knew how to go with the flow and continue creating the trim that the knitter needed for their bloomers. This will be the last of my pieces we're looking at today, and I hope that it helps you kind of realize that mistakes are human, and just like we say piecing is period, mistakes are period as well.
I've seen in my comments and other places online that there are some cultures where if you haven't unintentionally made a mistake or a hiccup along the way, that you will purposefully put an imperfection in a handmade piece. I believe someone mentioned that it's in Persian rugs that you do that. Nothing that is human made is perfect, and the only thing that's perfect is the divine, so I thought that was an interesting one. I know in Japan, I forget the exact term, I'll have to look it up and put it up, where actually repairing something gold will make it even more beautiful than before that piece was broken, celebrating and embracing the life that an object has lived. I just love that idea that a particular defect or mistake in a piece of work can be a particular person's signature. I know that that item was made by hand, and I know it was made by hand by someone who was very human, just like me. I have also made mistakes and decided to not go back and fix them. I embrace them as my own particular signature of a piece. The life that a sweater lives, even from its initial conception through to its mending and continued life, like that tells an entire story of how we interact with what we make and how we display what we make, how we love what we make and continue to make it useful even now. There's something so personal about wearing handmade items, especially vintage handmade items. Literally every time I'm wearing the vintage items that are in good enough condition for me to wear, and I look down and I see that little hiccup, it just makes me feel so connected to the person who made it. It is so vibrantly human. It makes me feel so much more valid myself when I'm creating something and it's not perfect, because it's my imperfection in my way, and that is my signature of my piece. I hope you like this little exploration in the mistakes that we might make and kind of embracing them as our own signature of what we do and how we do it. Maybe it applies to things further than just knitting or fiber crafts or sewing, and embracing those bits of ourselves that make us extra human. I also know of many knitters and crafters out there who are very particular about the pieces that they make and will go back and undo an entire piece to fix their mistake, and if that's what makes them happy, maybe that's their particular signature of how they make their items. Do what makes you happy, but also maybe consider that those little hiccups along the way are what truly mark a piece as being made by you and being lovingly created by you while all the other things in your life are going on. Because more often than not, the times where I have little hiccups is when I'm being distracted by my cute dog or a particularly funny moment in a show or someone's asking me a question. So it's just more evidence of the life that I've lived that ends up in the pieces that I've made. I hope you enjoyed this one. I really appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to like and subscribe. I will see you all again very, very soon. Bye.